The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Gloves Are Off. I'm Moses Wolde. We're going to be talking about various of hot topics, and I'm joined by, as always, Greg Buchanan, the voice of the CPCA. How are you today?
Not too bad, Moses.
Excellent. And, of course, we are also joined by our guest, Emmett Murphy.
Pleasure to be here, as always.
Heck of a reporter here at New Cab. Welcome.
Too kind.
Yeah.
Too kind.
All right. Well, we'll start. I'll start dissing you later on in the show, but we'll keep it clean right now. Well, we'll start with something, obviously, the Rangeland Derby. Great finish, but before we get to that, just 2 days prior, we had the accident that involved 3 horses being put down and 1 injured. A lot of controversy that happened throughout that time as well. Obviously, a lot of animal rights activists getting their 2 cents in. Is this just a typical thing that we've seen with previous events, like back in 2010 when we saw a couple horses being put down? Are we just kind of seeing a repeat of that, or are we going to actually see eventually a change in the whole Rangeland Derby and the whole rodeo at the Calgary Stampede?
Well, I think more like Calgary Stampede's done a lot of things to implement the safety of the horses, safety of the drivers, safety of the outriders, and they've done that from the chipping and the medical aspect of things for the horses, making sure they're healthy before they hit the track, and state-of-the-art medicine for all the horses at the Calgary Stampede this year as well as last year. So I think they're moving forward to show the animal rights people these horses are treated the best they can. They're treated like members of the family. You saw Chad Hardin after that accident, and he was devastated.
He was tearing up.
He lost members of his family. He had a horse there for 15 years, and that outriding horse was going to be a horse for his kids. So he was definitely upset. You're going to see this all the time when something like this happens in the sport. A lot of people that are negative towards it, we're going to jump on there and dish it. And unfortunately, those people that are saying bad things about the sport likely have never even talked to a driver, never even watched a race live in person. Just as soon as something bad goes wrong, let's just throw them under the bus.
Yeah, well, it's like you said. Well, like you said, it's not just people who don't like the sport, it's people who don't know the sport. I'm from East, and we never covered chuck wagons at all. The only time I ever heard about it before was if there was a death. It's an easy story to latch on to, and like he said, I just encourage somebody to go back to the barns and see what they do.
And the thing that really disturbed me about this is CBC, we're on CTV, right? Anyway, CBC threw the sport of chuck wagon racing under the bus on their website. Through the whole week, they advertised it, they promoted the Calgary Stampede, they covered it, but yet as soon as a story got negative towards the sport, boom, under the bus, poll on their CBC website, should chuck wagon racing be banned? Stir the pot a little more.
Yeah, and I guess I was going to mention that you are from out east, so you would have an understanding of both sides of it. It just kind of seems a little unfair if you're not familiar with the sport. What will happen to chuck wagon racing, I guess would be the following question.
I don't think anything will change. I think it's been around there for a while. They've always wanted changes. Calgary Humane Society, or whatever it is that Vancouver has been arguing against it, the Calgary one has been saying, you know what, they are taking care of their horses. They're doing everything to make this sport as safe as possible. I don't see it changing. It's their main event, the Calgary Stampede.
Yeah, they have vets on staff at the Calgary Stampede through those 10 days that come into the barns daily and look at all the horses that are taking part in the races at night, making sure they are fit. So those horses, before they hit the track, are looked at by a vet daily. So I don't know what else you can do.
All right, let's move on to the actual race itself. And it had a bit of a controversial kind of an ending or a beginning to it, but great finish nonetheless. Troy Dorchester winning the GMC Rangeland Derby and picking up a cool $100,000, not too bad. But we'll just kind of mention a bit of that penalty too to Glass and kind of the effects of the media afterwards with his father kind of complaining a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's a little embarrassing for Jason, a little embarrassing for the Glass family for what Tommy did on CBC Bold after the races. But coming out of the infield, I watched that race a number of times, and I know Jason, or at least Jason's dad, was claiming that Gary should be called for interference, Gary Gorse. That's tough to say. It really looked like Jason was out of his lane and did interfere. And you know what? That call is made well before that race is done. So it's not an interference call that all of a sudden when the races are done, oh yeah, by the way, Jason Glass got interference. No, that call was made before they left the infield. So that call by that judge, and that's the reason why they hire them, is made. And unfortunately, yeah, Tom Glass, I think we've seen the last of Tom Glass in CBC Bold. He was going on, taking away from Troy Dorchester's moment. That's Troy's moment. And then Tom just rained on it, right on national TV. It's like a father in the stands at a hockey game yelling at the referee. The kid's embarrassed about it. Unfortunately, Tom did it on national TV. But yeah, I think Tom was going off. They went to a CBC freeze. Then Scott Oak wrapped up. So I think Tom's days at CBC might be done.
But let's go back to the race itself. Great finish, 0.1 of a second. You can't ask for more than that.
Yeah, 0.01.
Or
Behind the
0.01.
controversy, it was one of the greatest races ever. I mean, he ran 4 wide basically to get down that stretch, and somehow nose him. It was incredible, the comeback. So beyond that controversy, it would have been one of the greatest celebrations in the sport.
It can't help him to a nicer guy. Troy Dorchester, just a great, big, lovable guy that always has a joke, always has a laugh, and he won in Ponoka, wins in Calgary, and Troy Boy's on a big roll right now.
And he won the aggregate.
Yeah, exactly. So he's got a
With
truck
the same,
and a whole bunch
same
of money
horses.
too.
So yeah, definitely goes well. We'll quickly go into the NHL CBA. Now, the first proposal the NHL provided definitely was a low ball move. But is this just a beginning of things, just kind of starting things? You know what, let's have a starting point, go from there? Or do these two obviously don't like each other and they're like, you know what, let's kind of stick it to them a little bit? What do you say?
Oh, it's tough to get through all the figures there. That's definitely a low ball point, like you mentioned. It's not going to fly on that one. A lot of the insiders are saying they're worried for how it's going to play out in the off season. I'm not really sure. These contracts are a mess and they got to sort it out. You can see Parise and Suter jumping on it while they can. Those are going to change.
Like, even the free agent clause in that their agreement, or at least that volley they threw, the players aren't going to like that a whole lot. And the money too. It's a first volley, a lot of volleys to come, and it's a dirty one too.
All right. From what we've seen so far, it's only been 1 week of talks, but from what we've seen, does it look like we're going to be heading to a lockout?
I don't know. They need to make a lot of changes to that. I think one of the big ones too is just your entry contract of being with the team for how many years now. I don't think players are going to enjoy that. It could be shortened, but it's not going to be a full year. You can't do that to the NHL again. Both sides have to come to an agreement.
10 years until you're a free agent. That was their first volley. Mm-hmm. Yikes. There's a long way until we finally say yes. This is the drop dead date. Season's going to be scrapped, or at least season's going to be delayed. I think that it's July right now. We have a lot of time until we say that date. I think it's the first volley. I think the players are going to come back with another one. I hope that they save the season. I have a bad feeling it's going to be delayed at least for a month or two.
All right, maybe even December. That's what the talks were from Trevor Linden himself. So we'll take a quick commercial break here on the Gloves, and we'll have more great hot topics coming up.